Welcome to the Arate Podcast, the podcast created to help senior executives and the organisations they lead live up to their full potential. Join us for cutting-edge interviews with leading senior executive and board members across all industry sectors, and for practical tips to accelerate your executive career. And now, here's your host, Richard Triggs.
For those people, obviously this is an audio podcast, but Jake, you're sitting there rocking this awesome moustache. I think you were telling me you've had that for 7 years. I'm very impressed. It's a brave man who, is mustachioed from such a young age.
Yeah, hey Richard, thanks for having me. Yes, it's true. The moustache has been for 7 years.
Right.
Because the missus didn't want me to shave it off at all.
Did it start with a Movember or it was just a spontaneous thing?
It started from a Movember, but there was a beard in between there, and
right.
It was a little Movember, and it's just stuck around.
Yeah, I think that Movember's got a lot to answer for. And we were talking just before we started, Jake. You're an imminent father, and so if your phone rings and the podcast is off, so let's get straight into it to make sure that we get it done in time. So why don't we start off? Tell us, Jake, a little bit about your current professional responsibilities.
Well, I'm the CEO of Lucas Papaw Remedies. Now, a lot of people might not know the name Lucas Papaw Remedies, but we are the crafters of the Lucas Papaw ointment red tube that you see all through stores and you put on your lips.
Yeah, look, it's such an iconic brand, and the packaging is so distinct, isn't it? Even down to the little graphic of the house. And tell us a bit about the house, because it's such a big part of your brand.
It is, yeah. So on our logo, we have a small house, and what that essentially is the Vera Hospital. So that's where Dr. Lucas founded the company in 1910, right. And he moved over from the UK in the late 1800s in search of a warmer climate, and he bought the Vera Hospital in New Farm. He was essentially a surgeon and a botanist, and so he treated people out of the Vera Hospital in New Farm up until in the early 1900s.
Right. And is that hospital still around, or is that building used for other purposes now?
It is. We originally thought it had burnt down and it was never to be seen again, but it was actually our head of marketing, Mel. She put a post out on Facebook, and I think it's like historic Brisbane or something like that. And we said, anyone's got any photos of this Vera Hospital? And a lady had messaged us and said, I actually live in the Vera Hospital. And we said, how can that be possible? It burnt down. And she said, no, it's now out in Samford Valley. And it's a women's health retreat where they do all gynecology and that sort of thing. And she said, yeah, it did burn down, but then it got moved out here and they got the original architects and they rebuilt the entire original Vera Hospital, and it still sits there until today. Yeah.
Fantastic. Have you been out for a visit?
I haven't yet, but I plan to go. Mum and Dad have been out there. Went out on the Harley, went and checked it out. We're trying to organise a time to go and see it. It's on. I think it's on 14 or 15 hectares now. It's got cattle and all that sort of stuff on it.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, great. Are you a Harley rider as well?
No, I'm not a Harley rider. I'm one of those mammals. I'm not middle-aged, but I am in Lycra.
What would it be? You'd be a YAML.
YAML.
Yeah. Excellent. Right. So, so Lucas Papaw, yeah. So, I can't even remember, but I've, used it. It's been in my cupboard since, forever. And it's interesting because I've been talking to a few people about your business recently, and, almost everybody I talk to, I say the name of the business and they immediately go, oh, the thing in the red tube. And I go, that's the one. So, and I know that from talking to you, recently, it's really a brand that's grown without any marketing, hasn't it? It's not as if you do huge billboard campaigns or so on. So to have such an iconic product in such iconic packaging is a real credit to whoever came up with that back in the day.
Yeah, it is. It is an incredible story. For example, I was walking through the airport a few months ago, and they had 3 stands set up. They had one for Tim Tams, one for Vegemite, and they had a whole stand for Lucas Papaw Remedies. And to know the little we do to do stuff like that, to be rubbing shoulders with giants in that industry is incredible. And it's not from a lack of making a decision not to do marketing. It's really just we're just such a small team, and up until now we've been such a small team that everything we did was just make ointment, put it into tubes and jars, make ointment, put tubes and jars. You know, like we've never had the opportunity to be able to tell our story.
And so the business founded in 1910. So what's that? 116 years. And I think you're the 6th generational CEO. Is that correct?
Yep. 6th generation.
Right.
It is crazy. 115 years.
115 years, of course. And so, let's come back to, the business in a moment, but talk a little bit about you and your background. So, when you were a young lad, was it always envisioned that you would be coming into the family business to take it to lofty new heights? I looked at your LinkedIn profile. I see that you started an apprenticeship for a little while.
Yeah. Well, to answer your question, I wasn't really considering coming to the business till later on in life. And it just so happened to work out that I went away to do a plumbing apprenticeship. That didn't work out for me. And I was sort of, in all honesty, farting around a bit and not really sure what I wanted to do, because I had this idea in mind that I wanted to be a tradesman, but just didn't like it. And so it was actually the old man who said, well, while you're farting around, why don't you come and make some use of your time and, work in the warehouse and take the trash out and stuff like that. So that's literally my first official introduction to the business. Prior to then, I was working on the holidays while I was still in school from, I think I was like 14 or something like that. And that was my first introduction to the business. And then I got about 6 months into that, and I was really, really enjoying, how old was I at that point? Probably, I was about 20 years old. And I was sort of, I was really enjoying being a part of the team and, seeing something grow and actually being meaningful. And then so I asked the old man, I was like, hey, how do you feel about if I was to, do you have a position in the warehouse? And he said, yep, I do. And so I started in the warehouse. Then just over time went from warehouse to production, into manufacturing, filling, that sort of thing. And then I had the opportunity to go to university and study economics. And that was right before COVID hit. And so I was deep into an economics degree, and then everything shut and the business didn't have a great time during that period. So the university degree was put on hold, and, all family members were to be on deck for the business. And then just haven't really picked that back up again, and had the opportunity to step into an operational role following COVID, and then had the opportunity to step into the CEO role when the 5th generation retired just over a year and a bit ago.
Right. And so was your dad the CEO as well?
That's on my mum's side. So it's
okay.
So dad's married in.
Right.
But yeah, it's all on mum's side. It's my pop, her dad, and then Dr. Lucas is my great grandfather.
Right. So your mum carried that surname through the generations?
Yeah. So my mum's maiden name is Talbot.
Right.
And then it changed over. So it was Dr. Lucas, Thomas Pennington Lucas. Then his son was Thomas Pennington Lucas. And then it was May Lucas, but then May Lucas married a Talbot.
Okay.
That's when it swapped to Talbot.
All right.
And then it went pop, and then it was and then mum was essentially a Talbot, and that changed to Swinglehurst when she married my dad.
Right. Okay. And along the way, did the children have brothers and sisters? So your uncles and aunts and great uncles and great aunts, did they sort of get involved in the business too, or has it just really come down through one line?
So my uncle, he was involved in the business for 20 years in the warehouse side of things.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have any kids. And my auntie, she did a lot of work with the government for a long, like 20 plus years. And then she came into the business about 7 years ago from like a compliance thing when we were trying to get into different countries and that sort of thing. But now all three are retired.
Right. Okay, sure. And so, as you were saying, you sort of started the business in a role in the warehouse, and then over, that time you've sort of stepped up operations manager, general manager, now CEO. And you also mentioned that you started an economics degree but didn't finish it. So obviously you've had a very sort of quick progression in your, early career to being the CEO of what is not an insignificant business. I mean, you guys are certainly a very successful and chunky business. So how over that period did you sort of learn the craft of, leadership and management to give you those sort of strings to your bow?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's hard work. First of all, you got to earn respect, especially as a family member in this business. You got to work harder than anyone else in the business.
Right.
So that was instilled in me when I first started. You had to work hard, and to be a leader, you have to, lead from example.
Yeah.
And so, I've now gone away and done training and all that sort of things in leadership, but from a very core, you led by example.
Right. So would you say that, most of your leadership style has come from, learning and watching, the previous generation, or, would you say there's been a particular course or some, mentoring or other development you've done outside of Lucas Papaw that's really supported your growth?
Yeah, I would say first off, it was learning from the generations before me.
Yeah.
That, Lucas, the reason Lucas is around is that we have a pretty high standard here, and cost of destruction doesn't come into the equation when something's not right.
Right.
So that was the first thing I learned, which was, there was a standard and we had to uphold that standard to continue Dr. Lucas's work. When I came into the operations role, about a year or so into that, I went away and did a course called the Owner Manager Program, which was a 6-month course. And it really opened my eyes to the phrase of working on the business and not in the business.
Yeah.
And so that really was a game changer with me to really go, okay, we've never really worked on the business. We've always worked in the business and making it better for a different tomorrow. But what does that actually mean from a leadership role, from a mission role, from a values role? What does that actually mean? So it was really, that was a big turning point, was that Owner Manager Program.
And who was that run through?
Rob Douglas.
A Brisbane guy?
Yeah. Brisbane. They do it. It's 3 days a week for 6 months. And it's out at,
anyway, it'll come to you. So Rod or Rob Douglas?
Rob.
Okay, right. I'm not sure if I know him, but sounds like something I should probably
Spices.
do.
It's out of Spices. Retreat out west.
Right. Okay, great. And so I suppose one of the things we haven't really talked yet about, for people who are unfamiliar with the brand, tell us about Lucas Papaw. What, you've got some core products, and about the size of the business and the size of the team and so on.
Yep. So I'll start right back I'll tell the whole story. So like I said before, Dr. Lucas, he came over from the UK, and he bought the Vera Hospital, and he would treat his patients with Papaw products. So he created 5 different recipes out of Papaws. The ointment is just one of them. And so he would use the Vera Hospital. He would treat patients being a surgeon, and then he would use his different recipes to help cure whatever they had. And then in 1917, just before he died, he wrote out all the recipes in a little handbook, probably by quill. And he died in 1917, and then his son took it over. It didn't really happen. Nothing really happened with the business at that point, and it was actually sold to 5 different shareholders. And when the 3rd generation came to the business, she then May Lucas, she moved the business to Acacia Ridge, where we are today, and we actually had a Papaw farm on the one block, which we don't have the Papaw farm here anymore, but we're essentially on the Papaw farm now.
Right.
And she had to sell her entire Papaw farm to get the funds to be able to buy the business back into the Lucas name, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And was it still operating then, though, or had they sort of let it fall dormant?
But yeah, it was full dormant. So she took it up, and then she would then go door to door. She then revamped the ointment. She left the other ingredients sit and just revamped the ointment. And then she went door to door and selling the product, selling it on buses all through Brisbane. Luckily enough, pawpaws don't grow really well in Brisbane. It's too cold. So then the farm then moved up to North Queensland, where we still pull all our pawpaws from. So then when she started to get of age and started to get ill, it was actually my nana who came into the business and just continued that work, door to door, buses, just talking to people, selling the product, door to door. And then my pop, who was originally a builder for Hutchinson's Builders.
Okay.
When he'd finished his building life, he came into the business, and at the time it was working out of the little brown shed. And so where I'm sitting right now, if I just go straight out 100 meters, that's where the little brown shed was.
Right.
And it was about a 12 by 10 brown shed, and we did everything by hand in there, even the mixing of the product. And then Pop came in, having a builder mind. He said, "We've got to make a purpose-built facility, and I can build it for you." So he built like a Besser block building about 50 meters from the little brown shed, and then we moved into there in the early 1960s, and we still have that same building today. It's used as our pawpaw ripening sort of room, and from that, we then were in that building from the 1960s all the way up to 1988. Sorry, we were in there from 1988 all the way up until 2011. We were in Pop's built warehouse, and we did everything from that. It was 264 square meter building. We did everything from that area, and it's good when I run tours around the place. It's good to take people back to that original building to go, you see where you just come from, and just see we did everything in this
Right.
area. And yeah, we only moved out of there in 2011. So then Pop's biggest achievement, what he did with the business, was to get it TGA listed, right? So we moved from essentially a cosmetic product to a therapeutic product, which is what Dr. Lucas wanted. Like, he was a surgeon, he was in therapeutic medicines and stuff like that. So held the product in very high regard and high quality. So Pop wanted to bring that to life, and by achieving therapeutic listing, it was one of his biggest achievements. And so we still hold TGA listing today, and it's something that's kept the business at a high standard since then.
Right.
Then from there, what happened was then Pop was with the business for a long, long time. Pop had the mindset of, I'll retire when I kick the bucket.
Right.
So he was here right up until the end. He passed away last year, and yeah, he was really the owner of the business the entire time. The fifth generation. Mum had been working in the business for 30 years up until last year as the manager, but was starting to again slow down a little bit. And they really, the fifth generation really led the business through some of the busiest periods. There was a time there where, product was being exported all over the world, and we were running to try and fill orders, and to be able to make the business into an efficient beast was a thing in itself. And so that's sort of what the fifth generation brought to the business, was a huge amount of efficiencies and product process.
So if we just go back to sort of pre-2011, when you were still operating out of that one, small warehouse, I mean, at that point, how big was your market? Were you just a sort of Southeast Queensland centric product and that people just knew about here, or was it known more broadly than that?
Yeah, when we were in our little Pops facility, we were in Woolies and Coles. We were in a lot of pharmacies, so Pricelines, your Terry White's, your Chemist Warehouse. I'm not sure if Chemist Warehouse was around at the time, but essentially a lot of pharmacies, and definitely Woolies and Coles and independents. So Drake's, or IGA's, that sort of thing.
Right. So you were pumping out, a very high volume then, even out of that small facility.
Yeah, it is. It is crazy.
Right. And so what was the impetus, to then have this sort of, I mean, you said fifth generation. I understand that, they, blood, sweat and tears took it to where, the business grew to, but how did it suddenly get the international recognition? I mean, okay, you got therapeutic goods accreditation, but that doesn't necessarily create a market for you.
No.
So what happened to suddenly get on the global sort of landscape?
Yeah, well, it was through organic endorsement. So I remember, I tell the story all the time. I remember I was 14 and we were in the little 264 square meter building. And one day Jennifer Hawkins came into the building.
Right.
At the time, there was only 6 employees. 3 of those were family. And she came in and she loved the product and, had endorsed the product through all the different platforms that there were back in, what was that, 2006 or something.
One of the original influences.
They're one of the original influences, yeah. And so from that, it sort of snowballed, and then it's all been organic. Like it's incredible the support that we've had worldwide. So we've had, Miranda, Kerr and Heidi Klum, endorse the product, and they still do today. And that sort of was when the brand really became a well-known brand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what started that growth, which was that organic endorsement.
Right. And then you were not in this conversation, a previous one that you and I had. Was it prior to COVID? There was a lot of Chinese interest in the product, and that really took the business up to, very lofty heights, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was China and India, which was just before COVID. We're saying like 2018. There was a lot of product going over to India and a lot of product going over to China. In those days, we never really had any control's probably the wrong word, but we never really had any insight to those markets, or we never really understood where the product was going back in 2018. We were just receiving the orders, and we're happy to receive the orders. It was a great, the volume was high, but looking back at that now, it's probably not a great brand sort of move. You don't really understand where the product goes, but it was a different time.
Yeah. And so then COVID, that obviously scaled back, but, the business is still, really performing fantastically. So tell us about the business now. I mean, if we're looking at the business, the start of the new financial year, 2025, how many people do you employ?
So we've now got 32 team members here at Lucas.
Yeah.
From COVID, we've now brought in-house. We now have head of sales. We have head of marketing. We've got product and packaging manager. So we're doing all the R&D through that space. Our quality team has grown from 1 to 3. We've got supply chain. We've got a supply chain manager now, head of payroll. So a lot of those roles didn't exist before COVID.
Right.
Yeah. So it was really like even just supply chain, right? So it was handled by operations, and there was no R&D, and there was no marketing, and it was really up to the owners to have the relationship with every single person on the ground.
Yeah. And so obviously bringing those roles in-house is to create a platform for you to take the business forward. So R&D and marketing and so on. So what are some of the initiatives that are happening in those various areas that you're quite excited about?
Yeah. So over the last 2 years, we've been working on a brand story. So when I first had the opportunity to look on the business and, what can we do? The biggest part for me was, we just had this amazing story that, why shouldn't it be told? And then how do we gear the business up to tell the story and to move the business into a new, environment? And so over the last 2 years, we've been working on a brand story. So we've filmed all assets of the business, all the way from the farm through to our fermentation process, the corpors, manufacturing, filling. We've also sat down with the owners, fifth generation and fourth generation owners. We've sat down with a lot of our team that have been here for upwards of 15 years, which we're so fortunate to have. Like a good chunk of our business, of the business, is made up of team members that have been here for a very long time. And so this brand video is a combination of about 50 to 60 hours worth of footage, and we're going to deep dive into, what happens at the farms, like who grows the pawpaws, what do we look for when we ask for pawpaws, with our manufacturing process, why are we different, lots of stuff. So it's about sort of taking a look behind the walls of Lucas Papaw for the first time in history.
Right. Okay. And so what do you think, you said that you've got a lot of your team who have been there for, a long time. What is it about the culture of the business that you think keeps people loyal and engaged?
I think for us, it's the no silo policy, and the ability to have continuous collaboration, right? So we all are able to come together, walk on the floor, talk to the supervisors who are managing production and all that sort of stuff. And I think that not being siloed into, that's not my role, I have people to do that for me, has allowed the business to sort of come together as a whole. We are really a small group, and we have to do jobs that, aren't in our, let's call it job description. Sometimes I could be sitting here talking to you, and then another time I'll be down peeling pawpaws, or,
Right.
Same thing happens with our head of marketing, our head of sales, or supply chain. They could be working on forecasts 1 minute, and next minute they'll be down filling tubes. If that's what happens, it doesn't happen all the time.
Right.
But essentially everyone digs in and does what needs to be done.
And so when you start to think about the future, what are the things that you mentioned that you're going to do this, sort of behind the scenes brand building exercise, which sounds fantastic. Obviously, you're making those investments in order to take the business to somewhere in the future. So what are you sort of projecting for Lucas Papaw perhaps 5 years from now?
Yeah, so I think for us, we'd love to have a new product, one of Dr. Lucas's products coming to fruition. Like I said before, he created 5 different recipes, and the ointment was one of them. So I'd love to sort of be making pretty good headway in that space. And if we're fortunate enough to have that launched in 5 years, but there's no real time restraints on that. We need to get it right. I'd like to have the product in the US as well. We currently have, we distribute to Costco. They're a close customer of ours, and I'd love to sort of test that market in the US and to then go back to the UK where Dr. Lucas was originally from, and bring the product home, for example.
Right.
That's
very good. And is it the kind of product that you could contract manufacture out, or would you foresee all of that being, product manufactured in Queensland that's exported to those markets?
So when it comes down to the pawpaws, there's only certain, obviously, climates that can do that. Ultimately, I think that we would always make it in Australia. I think there's something special about, and even in Queensland, for example, there's something special about being on the same block, and making it in Australia. And I think always holding true to that is really important.
Right. You just need to build a much bigger shed.
Yeah. Well, we've got the whole block now. We're fortunate enough to purchase one of the last buildings on the site, and so we're sort of sitting here going, right, now we've got the land. We've just got to start making plans to really expand it.
Excellent. And what about for your own career? I mean, obviously, you stepped up into this role of CEO at a fairly young age as compared to most CEOs that I talk to. Well, are you locked and loaded into Lucas? Are you going to be like your grandfather and get wheeled out in a coffin, or do you foresee something else for yourself in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it all the time. It's hard being so young. It's hard to answer where I'll be in 30 years. I'd like to hope that we set the business up in a way that, it can either be run by another CEO who is as dedicated as what I am in 30 years, or if my children have a willingness to be a part of the family brand, and of course they can come in and do that. I think it will be a very different business in 30 years than it is today. So you probably need someone a lot more smarter than what I am to be able to be CEO. But essentially, I'd love to pass it on to the next generation.
Look, I think the reality is, especially with the development of artificial intelligence, the world won't even be recognizable in perhaps even 10 years, let alone 30 years. So
that's true.
I kind of laugh. People are making plans, what's your 10-year strategy and so on. It's like, far out, I don't even know what my business is going to look like, 6 months from now. But I suppose when you're making significant investment in manufacturing facilities and, building out your leadership team and so on, it's important to have some kind of a vision, perhaps not 30 years out, but 5 years out. And so you, obviously, no doubt your mum and dad keeping a sort of a strong eye on, how it's all going and making sure that you are a good custodian of the brand and so on.
Yeah.
What about, some of the external support you've got? I mean, you were introduced to me by a mutual friend. You've obviously collected some good people around you. Do you have a board, or, what kind of external advice do you get?
Yeah, so the board is made up of the owners, essentially, and then 2 external parties.
Right.
So yeah, I have a very close relationship with the former owners, and we sit probably about every quarter to discuss, what's going on, what's next, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, a very close relationship with the past owners. And even from that point of view, mum comes in every now and then just to say hi. Being retired, she's got the time, she comes in and says hello. She's actually coming out of retirement for the next couple of weeks. Well, once this baby's born,
right,
she's actually stepping back into her original role, just for everyone here to have a historic, someone with historic sort of background. If there's any questions that need to be raised, or as something comes up that we get stuck on.
Right. So most grandmas, when there's a new baby, step in to help with the baby, but your mum's like, screw that, I'm going to work in the business, thanks. No more nappies for me.
Yeah, well, yeah, 100%. Well, she has made it very clear. She said, once you guys are on your feet, don't expect me to be here for too much longer, because I want to go back into being a grandmother.
Right.
So we're fortunate enough that both of my parents are retired, and my fiance's parents are both retired too. So we got a pretty good support network, and so it allows me to come back to the brand a bit sooner. But I want to spend that time away just to make the most of the firstborn.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, look, you only have your first child once in a lifetime, and I think that too many of us, probably look back with some regret and say, I wish I sort of, had more time being a dad, in that very sort of formative years. But that's excellent, Jake. Well, look, I really appreciate talking to you today. It sounds like a great business, and it sounds like you're leading it to lofty new heights. So I wish you all the very best, and look forward to hearing about the next installment in the Lucas Papaw story.
Yes, thanks, Richard. I really appreciate the chat.
No worries. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you for listening to the Arate podcast with Richard Triggs. We frequently feature guests from organisations we are currently recruiting to build the company brand as an attraction strategy for candidates. If you would like to promote your organisation's brand as an employer of choice, please contact Richard directly on 0403 588 517 or via email richardt@arateexecutive.com.au.